is always now. Words strain, crack and sometimes break under the burden, under the tension, slip, slide, perish, decay with imprecision, will not stay in place, will not stay still. Shrieking voices, scolding, mocking, or merely chattering always assail them. The word in the desert is most attacked by voices of temptation. That's Christ, obviously. 40 days and 40 nights. The crying shadow of a funereal dance. The loud lament of the disconsolate chimera. Now the chimera is a fanciful creature of the mind. It was a lion's head with a goat's body and a snake's tail. So it's something which is created purely as a mind fixation. And it's those sort of things which he's saying is our concept of reality. Now let's go back to this, because this is an image which he'd stolen from another poet. This idea of the stillness of the Chinese jar. Now, we haven't got a Chinese jar which has got the stillness with it, but we've got a plate. Willow pattern. We've been crazy about willow pattern plates for a long time. I once did a set which was purely a willow pattern plate. We did the Mikado when we did this, and we did it 35 feet across, and it was pretty good. The kids painted it. It only took us about 2 weeks. Now, you may not know this, but the willow pattern isn't just a pretty picture, it's a story. Okay? And it's a story about young lovers. It's a four-hanky job. 2 young lovers, a mandarin, whose daughter fell in love with the secretary, his secretary. And of course it wasn't very good. He'd already organised who she should marry. So he turfed him out and built a fence around the estate so that he couldn't get in. She couldn't get out. She could only walk in the gardens and in the summer house where they used to meet originally. There's the summer house, there's the big house, the palace that the mandarin lived in. And she used to go down to the river's edge every day. So the clerk, who's still desperately in love with her, used to write her poems and put them into little Chinese boats and sail them down the river, sail them past, and she used to pick them up and leave them. There's the river, sea alongside it. There's no little boats in the water, but judging by the scale, I think that would just be too difficult. On the day that she was due to be married to this other chap that the mandarin had organised for us, so it's one of those Asian organised marriages, the secretary comes in, dressed as a guest, takes her on a boat and sails away to an island not too distant in the estuary of the river, where they live as man and wife until the mandarin finds out where they are. He then sends his men to the island to kill the secretary, which they do. When she sees that the secretary has been killed, she burns herself to death in her own house. It's a fairy tale, obviously, it's for children, yes. You can see the smoke leaving the house there. Okay. You think I'm telling fibs? It's all here in the plate.
It's the lighter side of T.S.
It's all here in
Eliot.
blue and white. Yeah. But all is not lost. The gods are so moved by their true love that they are reincarnated as birds.
As plates.
As plates.
So.
In Joe's cat. Oh dear. Pearls before swine. So, but this is the same thing as the Chinese bars that he talks about here. The Chinese the Chinese jar has a pattern on it which resonates, tells a story, as music does, as novels do. And those of us who are old enough to have read a story several times find that it has a unique beauty that music has, because music tends to last for a shorter period of time, as poems, as plays do. When you've seen them many times, remember people used to recommend that you read a book at least 5 times. When it gets to that stage that you know the beginning as you're reading the end, and you know the end as you're reading the beginning, and you know the middle as you're reading both, it starts to resonate outside of time. You've got all the images that you need. When you're in this bit, you can hear that bit resonating as you can in music. When you can hear the violin doing something that the cello was doing before. when you can hear the chord sequences that are actually developing, and you know where they're going, but you know where they came from. You've got something which is timeless. It's no longer beginning, middle and end. It's quite uniquely complete. Now that's what he's talking about, that art can lift you out of the everyday, out of the routine, out of the treadmill, and place you in a state looking at the world the way God sees it. By that I mean timelessly. So you've got the story and you can see the beauty of it, and you know that there's nasty moments, but that there is a resolution, and that the resolution is part of the whole push and pull. That, you know, the time, the negativity, the negation is all part of the completeness that is the eternal now, present. And this is a representation of the eternal now. I can almost hear the spuds and things that have been on. No, seriously, that's what he's getting at here. And it's a tremendous advocation of art. Art literally in the sense of forming yourself, taking images, forms, patterns, seeing the pattern in something and exalting it, glorifying it to a state when it becomes a timeless, unique concept. You know, you've been through the negation, you've been through all these states.
Alan, just on that line as well, I thought it was great the way he actually does that on his own line, because he could have put the word moves at the end of the line.
Yeah.
It would more normally be as a Chinese jar still moves in a way. But because he's put the moves on the next line, he's made a sort of double meaning about the Chinese jar still, because it can be kind of like an adjective, the phrase Chinese jar still, that still, which is a beautiful concept, but then it can be still as in continually.
Yes.
It's carrying, you know what I mean? So he's always positioning words very carefully to make the point, isn't he, about his own pattern.
Yeah, well, he uses this wonderful thing called ellipsis, where he'll actually distort the language. He'll actually miss bits out so that you look for them, and you feel that, as you've said there, that word should be in a different way, in a different place. And because of that,
more readings, doesn't
that's
it,
right.
by those tiny little shifts.
Yes, in the same way as when the tube train stops, it gives you a whole different concept about, you know, I was going somewhere, and this is an abysmal place to be, and suddenly it's a very dangerous and emptying and terrifying place to be. It wasn't a few seconds ago, but once the train stops and then the light goes out, you suddenly realise just what a horrendous place you're in. And it's that which shakes you. And luckily it all comes back and life comes flooding on and the train carries on, but it's things like that, with the distortion, which suddenly make you see the pattern and realise where you are. You know, this is what we do. We all do it. Tubes, dead easy, no problem.
Yeah.
Hang on a minute.
It's only when you take one tiny little piece and move it in a pattern that you're familiar with that you realise the pattern was there sometimes, isn't it? You just move something slightly out, and then in becoming aware of that, you become aware of the pattern itself, don't you?
The whole pattern. You look for it then to fulfil itself. And the fulfilment of that is, you know, whether it's an Agatha Christie. Oh, by the way, yes, I just mentioned in passing, Agatha Christie was so moved by this poem. She apparently wrote, she used to write as Mary Westmacott. Anyone know this? Yeah?
Yes.
The Rose and the Yew Tree is a Mary Westmacott story, which is Agatha Christie responding to Bernard Norton, which I didn't know.
Alan,